I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Economic Development Committee. I want to thank all of you for coming here bright and early this morning, and I will turn this over to our Economic Development Director, Tricia Newcomer.
Good morning, everyone. We have before us this morning a review and consideration of potential fee reduction, a request from Mr. David Perlmutter for Sussex County Tax Map 431 5.00318 and 431 5.00323.00, known as the residences at River Place. Mr. Perlmutter is here this morning as well. And just to kind of acclimate you to the project that we're referencing, you'll see on the screen the area where Building 3 is proposed on South North Street, just south of Middleford Road, to the north, I guess northeast of Water Street. Building 3 will be closest to the current building number 2. I believe that one is number 2, right? I always get them backwards. And with this project, there is a stormwater or sewer line that runs through there that needs to be relocated due to the location of the building. Certainly the building can't have the sewer underneath of it. Building 1 and 2 didn't require this type of work, so this is new to this phase of the project. And as part of this project, the existing sewer line, we had our city engineer review the plan with the existing sewer line, and they're recommending placement of that sewer line out in the roadway with an additional increase in size of the pipe from 16 inches to 18 inches due to achieving the slope for the self-cleaning velocity on that. And just to kind of show you, and Charles, you can jump in here if I misstate anything. The highlighted yellow line shows how the sewer runs currently. The flows come from Middleford Road south. And the original plan that they had when they went out for bid for Building 3 kind of had it, I believe, right to the edge of the property line, all the way around. Certainly then our engineer made the recommendation that it did need to go out in the roadway to meet that slope. So now there's a lot more items that are in play with bypass pumping that needs to be done in the process of trying to do that relocation and still keep flows moving. And so in that process, Mr. Perlmutter has received several quotes from Corrado and Teal Construction. I believe we have both of those in your packet, showing the additional costs that that they'll incur for this project to be able to make that relocation. Significantly higher than what their anticipation was. I believe the original estimate was $150,000. And you can see the two estimates that you have are not 100% equal, in that Corrado is a little bit more in-depth, where it includes the street paving and all of those type of things. But when you compare apples to apples on the sewer, Teal was $360,000, and then Corrado was around $595,000, almost $600,000 just for the sewer. So he's here this morning asking for some relief on that from the committee. So I'll open that up for conversation.
Okay, are there any questions or comments from the committee? I know this is a lot to digest all at one time, but it is a significant project here at the city, and it's also a significant ask.
One question I have, the bypass pumping would have been required under either plan, correct?
It likely would have, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
But that would have been temporary?
It is temporary.
Temporary,
Yep,
yeah.
only during construction.
Right.
Okay.
Councilman Henderson, does the city have any costs or estimates of their own for paving, for the cost to do the work? Because basically we've got almost a 2x delta without, and I realize Teal didn't put any pricing in for paving, but
It still has to be done.
do we have any costs for paving?
Okay, so Councilman, the Director of Economic Development, myself, spoke with the Director of Public Works about the paving cost. What's in this information is approximately $60,000 to overlay South North Street. Mr. Mears ran an estimate, and his number was about the same, about $57,000. So kind of rely on Corrado for that number that they gave us. We did not do an estimate of this project. As you can imagine, this is a very complicated, as you well know, this is a complicated process. We don't do this very often, so we would have to employ a contractor. We've worked with Teal several times. Corrado has done a few jobs in the city of Seaford. Both have done successful work. You know, we would likely go to contractors just like this. So I trust the numbers they gave us are appropriate. It is interesting to me there are such wide-ranging prices, but that's the best way I can probably answer that question.
Are there any benefits to the city
Yeah.
as far as this project that we would benefit from?
I'll say a couple things about that. As Tricia stated, obviously the pipe, when it's rerouted, will be new. So the original pipe was put in the mid-50s. So the useful life of a sewer line can vary, but in a situation like this, let's say it's 75 years or so. So we're getting a new pipe. So that's one betterment the city's getting. The upsizing of the pipe was not necessary for us. It was a slope issue because he's adding more lineal footage. So that technically is not a betterment, but the pipe will be new. Secondly, the road is going to get paved, which is something that we do regularly, we would have had to do. So the paving of the road is a betterment. So those two things, as I identify it, are betterments to the city.
And I guess moving it up off the river,
There's a point to that. Obviously, the sewer, if it's in the flood zone, needs to be flood-proofed.
right?
But yeah, moving it up to a higher elevation would, in essence, harden that structure from floods.
Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, I had basically the same question as Councilman Henderson, but from an engineering perspective. Did we go back to the city engineer and ask them if they could provide a cost estimate of what their specifications would result in dollar-wise?
We did not. We
Okay.
can. In a situation like this, the city engineers are reviewers and approvers. So they take the developer's plans, they review and approve them to make sure they're in accordance with our specifications, our long-term planning, so on and so forth. We can certainly go back to them and ask for an engineer's estimate if you'd like, but all of this cost, you know, goes back to the developer. So, but this is a complicated process, complicated project.
Yeah. I'm curious with the escalation in prices right now in construction, what you're looking at as far as, you know, that are just
We just need you to come up
escalation
to the
costs
podium.
Hi, good morning.
versus.
Good morning.
Truly, the whole project, I mean, the costs have gone through the roof. 90 days ago, maybe now it's almost 120 days, we bid this project. And just in that short period of time, I mean, it's gone up, just the building construction alone, leaving the sewer issue out of it, just our costs to build the building the way we want, get it up, leased, without the sewer relocation, is over $1 million more in 120 days. Now, my group's, you know, we've always been the type that when we came to Seaford, we said we're going to make Seaford right. We're going to change the face of it. We're putting multi-million dollars here into this town, and we continue to support it. We always will. You know, that's a big number to swallow that we didn't expect. The sewer, we had an original estimate with our builder for $120,000. Now, we couldn't get any real hard numbers because we didn't know exactly what the city engineer wanted. So when plans were finally done and all the different pump stations were added, you know, we got these estimates. As what was stated earlier, we only got certain numbers from Teal, and Corrado gave a more in-depth price. Corrado will be our contractor on site, doing the rest of the work as a site contractor. So, you know, Teal's very good. We could use them. Unfortunately, Teal cannot start the project, they've told us, which is another issue for another 90 days. They're so booked up right now. Corrado could start sooner. So we're kind of, adding that money from the sewer plus another $1 million that we're having to put in from 120 days ago is like, are we going to do it? So that's why we're asking the city for some kind of relief. We could truly build this building. I know the city doesn't want to hear this, but we could design this building and building 4 where the existing sewer would not affect, relocation. But maintenance-wise, you don't want that, or building over an existing sewer and that kind of issue. So I know that's a moot point, but as far as construction, we could design it where none of our footings would be in the path of the sewer. So it could work with the sewer that's in place.
So your original estimate of 120,000 wasn't per these plans that were submitted for review?
It was based on, if Trish brings up that original right there in the green, it shows that the footage for new pipe to be installed based on the same size and estimate. Now, they didn't know how many pump stations were going to be needed and temporary and that kind of thing, and that's what your engineer kind of guided our group to, and that's how the numbers.
But you didn't have a hard bid on that? It was just,
It was a contractor's estimate based
Okay.
on quantity of footage of pipe, which they know their material costs and they know their labor costs, but that was back in, 120, 150 days ago.
I think from the beginning of this project, it was known the pipe needed to be moved in order to build out this project. So that's
Correct.
been part of the conversation.
Correct, and we had a number in our budget to do this. It's just, we didn't think it was gonna cost $750,000 to do that sewer relocation.
also in your request, you spoke to, long-term anticipation of spending, I think, $100 million in the city.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you speak to that? Like, what does that look like? I mean, I'm sure they're familiar, but I'm just not.
Okay. Well, if you add another $15 million or so to building 3 and 4, just on this parcel right here, we also own a lot of property on this side of Market Street.
Okay.
The power plant, some other properties. We're going to be tearing down those buildings in the not too distant future. And we received a, is it a final or preliminary site plan approval, I think, on this side?
I believe you have a preliminary site plan
Preliminary
approval.
site plan approval. And our anticipation is to do, once we finish over here, is to move on this side of Market Street and continue new development with all the property we have, and possibly even assembling more to develop downtown. And I threw out an estimate of, the investment my company would be making, and it's, a significant, we've already put in a significant amount to this point, and we continue to support Seaford and will do so.
And when you speak of development, are you talking more apartment complexes? What
I
are
think
we
there's going to be a
talking
mix. I think there's going to be more apartments. I think we might consider possibly doing some condos on this side, on the water. It's just, originally when we first started back, when we acquired a lot of this property, we were trying to persuade Purdue to put their ag business there. That didn't work out. We courted them, went down the road, and they ultimately decided to go to Del Mar. So that was our initial, but since then, our apartments have rented very well. And we think there's still a need for more luxury living downtown and some more retail. And that's what our ultimate goal is, as long as I'm around and my children, to do this.
Joan, the C3 zoning is written such that first floor is commercial, and then they can, so it would be mixed use.
Oh, okay.
It wouldn't just be.
Mixed use, okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Councilman Henderson, I got a couple questions for Charles or Tricia. What is the current flow into that area without those 72 or 36? It's 72, I guess. What's the number of apartments? 72, great. I get confused because each of the other buildings are 36. Yeah. This one will be 72. So what's the current flow into it, and what's the expected growth of the flow going into that area, minus or without respect to the new apartments? And what would be what's the benefit to the city by having that flow going through the relocated sewer?
All right, let me try to answer.
Yeah, I have a secondary question.
Okay.
And it's kind of maybe nickel dime stuff, but why is the cost of the laterals that are being tied into this sewer included in this quote? That should have been, that should have been an expense, a development expense on its own.
Yeah, that maybe take that easier one first. The laterals would not be our cost for the main sewer, for the regional, I'll call it sewer.
Right.
So I agree with that. Going back to your original question, this is part of the upper reaches of what we call the interceptor sewer. So in this area, one critical thing, it picks up the flows from the hospital lift station. So I'll just estimate the flows to be daily of 500,000 gallons, sometimes maybe 750,000 gallons. Very critical sewer. If you consider our total flows down to the treatment plant now are 1.2 million. So it picks up about half, picks up a lot of the reaches of Route 13 and all that. Very critical sewer. The other complicating factor here is, as you well know, Councilman, when you pick up flows from a lift station, it comes all at once. So it's a slug load, which we have to be able to accommodate, and it doesn't overflow during that period. So that's why this is so critical. That's why the pumps to bypass it are so large. Additionally, by moving it out into the road, it's kind of a dance you have to do. We're replacing it in the line of an existing sewer, so that complicates the contractor's work. This is going to be one of the more complicated relocations and reconstructions that we've done in a while. So I don't know if I got to all your questions, but.
Well, it's been almost 30 years, but I have been involved in sewer relocations with the previous employer, and exactly this type of work in Dover, Delaware. So I'm just, the next question I would have is, what's the likelihood of a problem of increasing the sewer line to 18 inches and then reducing it back down at the bottom on Water Street where it connects?
Yeah, again, our engineers have looked at that, and the upsizing was related to the slope to maintain a 2-foot per second velocity. And the reason why we want that number is it creates a self-scour in the pipe, so sediments don't drop out and create a clog. So the additional diameter of pipe was not necessary here. I'll go a little sideways. What we're focused on over the next 3 years in our Public Works Department is the removal of inflow and infiltration throughout the city. And we believe that'll free up a lot of capacity in this line. So that's why we're not targeting upgrades at this point. We want to remove all the inflow and infiltration, regain that capacity. But in this area, we've determined that an upsize in infrastructure is not required.
Is there currently, I know we've been doing some infiltration testing, is there currently a problem with that section?
I'll say yes and no. This section of sewer line, no. We've bolted down all the lids. We've made sure there's no leaks in it. We cambered it many years ago, fixed what we needed to fix. But the reaches that drain into it, yes, there are some inflow and infiltration problems. We're noticing, as an example, when it rains, it's a direct correlation to the flows that we receive in the hospital lift station.
Yeah.
So we know in that drainage shed, something needs to be fixed. So we're focusing our smoke testing and our investigations in those areas. But as you well know, it's a large area. The hospital, it's a complex structure. We don't want to harm them. We don't want to smoke out their facility. So we have to change our approach there.
The only reason I ask is I'm just trying to measure the additional benefit to the city to have it moved, because this sewer line was there when the property was purchased. It was a known, and, the developer knew about these things, and it's unfortunate that the development had to take so long and prices have escalated, but we got to measure the advantages to the taxpayers to have it, to go ahead and absorb some of this cost.
And that's an interesting line of discussion, and Tricia and I have discussed with the Director of Public Works. It's a continuum, okay? So at its lower end, at its minimum end, is the paving on South North Street. That's something we would have to do. This project is going to move that schedule up, so we see that in this estimate, $60,000 as a betterment to the city that we would otherwise have foregone. As far as the pipe being new, there's a number there. I can't really give you that number per se, because when you boil it all down, it's really just, it's extension of useful life. So
Right.
that's a complex calculation to put out there. But what I would say is this: in our policies and dealing with developers throughout the city, that's a benefit that the city intrinsically gets for free, because we're taking the long-term maintenance of that on. So we don't get asked to calculate increased useful life and pay developers back. So to me, that's the give and take that we have with the development community. They provide that betterment,
So-
because of what we take on.
So to my mind, just imagine a scenario where Mr. Perlmutter's company didn't purchase the land, didn't do anything. We would, at some point, we got the line's 70 years old. We would have to do something with it at some point.
Yep.
So there has to be a calculation in my mind, what that would be worth, because if it wasn't done, then we would have to do something.
You're correct.
So I'm just trying to get the measurement, just weigh the worth of it, the worth of our contribution towards it.
Yeah, and that, again, is a very complex discussion that would require some study to get the answer. We have an easement that runs through there now, so we would do a couple things. We would evaluate the line, and we would look at alternative technologies, such as slip lining the pipe is an example. We have plenty of room to do it there, and we've done that in several locations. It's expensive, but it's not as expensive as pipe replacement. So those are the alternatives we would look at to keep it in place. Relocation for us in that scenario you described probably would not be the way we would go, because we have the easement. It's not under pavement. It's not at great depth.
I agree with that
Yes.
statement, because my previous supposition was that there was no development, that it would just be replaced in kind.
Yes, sir.
Right? We'd still do bypass pumping, we'd still do all these other activities in order to replace the pipe. However, I just think that we need to have a little bit more information before determining. But I just need to know what the cost, in order to offer a benefit or offer an accommodation, what the value is.
I mean, we can certainly ask our engineers to run a value, but just so that maybe we can put it in a box and ask the right questions and not, run up engineering fees. What your supposition is to determine the cost of useful life benefit the city would be assuming if this project were to occur, by replacement
Yes.
of a
Yes.
70-year-old facility with, in essence, a brand-new facility, what that delta is.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, because I'm trying to measure, the, you know, what it's worth to the taxpayers.
Isn't there a, without delaying this, isn't there a way to come up with a estimate on that? Do you have an approximate idea, Charles, on what, I hate to,
I would have to wag it, but
yeah.
trying to think how we could, I mean, I guess in its simplest terms, you know, the pipe is brand new. If we do away with the construction it takes to realign it and bury it, you're getting brand new pipe. So if the city were to take on the cost of it, for example, the new pipe, that would be, you know, we're handing him the new pipe in essence to put in the ground. That would be a cost share. And we kind of do that routinely with developers. As an example, as you guys are certainly well aware, if a developer needs a 6-inch sewer line to serve his development and the city wants a 10-inch, we would pay the difference in that upsizing. And that's a definable cost. That's the difference in pipe material between the two. So we can, you know, it's almost a lookup in a catalog. This is the number times the lineal foot. You could take a similar approach here, although this is not an upsize. This is just new pipe.
It wouldn't cost the city to put in, but that's what I'm saying, is that, in my mind, is that worth $50,000? Is that worth $75,000? Is it worth 30? Is it worth, I don't know what, if we could come up with a reasonable estimate.
We haven't bought 18-inch pipe in a while, so I can't just tell you a number on that. I can certainly get a number from our Director of Public Works through his suppliers. You know, and obviously, again, I guess if you break it down in its simplest of terms, you know, if we can find out this difference in cost and then the paving, I would say those are definitely two areas that are betterments that would be provided to the city, the taxpayers, that we can justify and quantify.
Any other questions, comments from the committee?
I have one more question. Am I understanding correctly that in the October 27, 2020 council meeting, this same project was given $169,000 in water and sewer impact fee relief?
Correct. That was a recommendation from this group.
Okay.
Yep.
And that-
In lieu of, or in return of getting 3 of the properties downtown
Okay.
demolished. Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, we appreciate, you know, Mr. Perlmutter's willingness to work with the city and kind of advance some schedules to, and that's not to go in too much depth on that, but we all went to a Courageous Conversations discussion, and one of the issues that came up several times was the condition of downtown and buildings that were vacant. So, you know, Trish and I discussed that. Mr. Perlmutter was very receptive to accelerating his schedule for demolition, and we felt like, you know, that high tide would rise all boats, as they say.
It's a win-win.
It was a win-win.
I tend to agree with Councilman Henderson that I would like to see some more definitive numbers here on the benefit to the city. And perhaps even if this Corrado would be willing to break out in their proposal, the cost increase from your original plans to what the city engineers are, what came back in the comments.
Well, they basically, that green line right there is basically,
Hey, David,
they,
I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Got to come up to the,
again, that green highlighted area is what Corrado originally bid or thought, putting in a new sewer from there, running it, same size pipe size. They didn't have all that other stuff that's on the other plan shown that's required, and that's how they came to the estimate of $120,000.
I think maybe to clear it up for you, that estimate showing that was very, very premature. and it was a very high-level budget estimate based on
I understand.
minimal information. It went from that to, if you go to the next picture, to that, which was reality, that's final plan. So we're putting a lot of faith in an estimate that was done with no information. I'm sorry, very little information. That's the difference.
I understand.
Yeah.
I understand. But as a contractor, you can look at this set of plans and say, this is what it would cost versus this final set of plans, this is what it's gonna cost. And obviously, you have price escalations in that.
Sure.
And I understand that that's a lot of work for a contractor, and they may not wanna do that. So, I would just like to see a more definitive number.
Okay. I guess in conclusion from my end, if there's not a possibility of some kind of assistance here, I mean, we really need it. This project might just sit, you know, even though we just received the development grant from the state. I don't know if you're aware of that. We just received the DDD grant approval. They're helping with the project as well on Building 3. But, you know, with the costs, you know, $1 million right now, and who knows, it could go higher. No one knows. I mean, right now, this coronavirus is like thrown everything out of whack. But what we're hearing is that hopefully this is the peak, you know, and things are going to stabilize, but no one's going to say definitely. Now, there could be another price increase on some type of materials at the end of March, so we would want to lock in with our contractor 100%, our builder, before the end of March, if we were going to proceed. But I guess what I'm getting at is, you know, we're willing to step up. We didn't anticipate another $1 million. I mean, I can't charge more rent to these tenants than what the market down here can support. So it's really, we're putting additional equity into the project to continue the growth and revitalization of the downtown. But to add another $750,000 on top of the $1 million to get this project 3 built, you know, I don't think my partners and I are going to be able to step forward. I think we're going to have to take a back seat. It could sit for years. I don't know. So, you know, in conclusion of that. So.
Maybe just to ask the question, Mr. Perlmutter, from your statement, time truly is of the essence for you to lock in this price, move this project forward. Is that correct?
Well, our builder has told us that, you know, right now they feel good that the numbers are tight till the end of March, you know, that all the price increases across the board, we feel good that we can get a final contract done with our builder between now and then. Then if we use Teal, you know, we got to see if we can get them to push their schedule up. If we can get Teal, otherwise it'll be Corrado who's doing the rest of our site work.
And I do believe that there's a caveat, which he hasn't started construction, so that I don't know that it comes into play just yet, but I think that there's a caveat that you cannot have a lapse of 60 days of no construction. So once he starts the project, you can't just stop it for a period of 60 days. I think that does affect the funding, if my
So-
memory serves me correct.
And I can't speak for the committee completely, but what I interpret or what I think I hear is we have some known costs. We know, and some known facts. We know repaving of South North Street, $60,000, your contractor's estimate, is a known betterment for the city. Just to ask the question, if we were to look at funding that for you at this juncture and moving that forward, would that put you where you needed to be? Maybe not where you need to be, but would that be enough to move you forward, or not? Would that not work?
Is that the number, 60,000?
I believe that's the number that was in
Yeah.
Corrado's
Could I,
estimate.
Is that, you're saying the only,
Could I-
the only help
could
on
I,
this?
Well,
could I interject here?
yes, sir.
60,300.
That's the major sticking point for me, is we have two estimates. One is almost 2x the other, and if you minus out the cost of paving, there's still a large delta.
Yes.
And to ask the city to foot the bill for your preferred contractor, I don't think it's fair. So my my thing would be, is that if you take Teal's estimate and go and add the cost of paving, that's $420,000. That's still $300-some thousand less than Corrado. So I don't have a full understanding of the difference between Corrado and Teal.
The way that,
Corrado has told us that they cannot buy the pipe as cheaply as Teal. Okay, the actual materials.
and
They don't know how they're doing it, because our builder even shared with Corrado to see if we could get their number down.
The cost of the material is fractional
right.
to the excavation and the labor and the bypass pumping. That's a fractional part of the cost of this project.
To get your numbers somewhat similar in both, the sewer, so if we back calculated based on Corrado's estimate, the sewer piece only was $595,800 to Teal's $360. So when you're to try to look at just sewer, so that you're apples and apples, it's $595 versus $360. If that
Again,
helps.
almost 2X.
Oh, I didn't see the back page. I thought this was
Yep.
a single page. I'm sorry.
She had to turn it over for me too.
didn't
I'm not
see-
used to
I
double.
didn't see it was.
Saving paper.
She wants to save paper. It's an admirable quality, but it confuses people. I mean, I don't know if the committee can act on that and has enough information, but, you know, not to hold you up any longer, would that put you where you needed to be to move forward?
A relief of $60,000
Paving of the road?
to the cost, I don't think that'll get us
Okay.
moving this project forward, no. I mean, you also got traffic controls out there, I don't know what those numbers are. There were some monies in there for that.
Wouldn't you assume that's in the Teal's estimate, traffic control?
Well, no, I think
Yes.
if I read it correctly, one of the contractors eliminated it from their costs, right, from their estimate. I have to look at it, yeah.
Teal just says there's an assumption that North
Yes,
Street
that's
is
it.
closed to traffic.
Right,
Which, again, we could work with them to some extent to do that.
right.
But, because we could close that road during portions of construction, which, you know, we're able to do that.
Yeah, but I've heard that this is gonna be a several-month-long project, so I don't know
Right.
how long you're gonna wanna
And-
keep that road closed.
Well, and depending upon how the bypass pumping lays out, you know, we don't want to affect your existing residents. We
Right.
cannot affect traffic patterns to the hospital, which you and I discussed, you know.
This is gonna be a 60-day project.
And it's in a critical area, so it's complicated.
All right, committee, what is your desire?
Based on Mr. Perlmutter's statement, I mean, we've got one option that is kind of off the table. And unless we have more information about cost, to what our contribution would be, which we don't have at this point, I'm not prepared to make a commitment on taxpayer dollars at this point.
Let me ask a question. How quickly do you think we could get those kinds of cost estimates? Is that something we could do within a week or 2 weeks?
We have to reach out to the engineer.
Yeah, I'd have to reach out. I would hope 2 weeks we could do it.
And we could reschedule this to come back on the 19th? Just
Yeah.
asking,
Yeah.
just conversation for.
We could try it.
For consideration.
Sure.
Any other comments from the committee?
I'm a little concerned about it taking 2 weeks. I would like to say I would like to see it in a week.
We
And
do
I
have a-
wonder if it would be an opportunity if Corrado could give us their estimate. Would that be something amenable to the committee?
We do have to make sure that we maintain our notification requirement
We have
for
7-day
FOIA. So we have to
notification.
have, it's a 7-day period,
Yeah.
guaranteed.
Right,
If
yeah.
we
A
It
week's
couldn't
minimum.
come back any
So
sooner
you're
than
talking
7
about
days.
actually putting it out to bid for a
No,
number?
no, talking about rescheduling this committee meeting.
This meeting?
It
You have to
could
post
not
7
occur
days in advance.
And
Before 2 weeks?
before
Oh,
7.
It's now less than,
Okay.
it's now less than 1 week before the next meeting.
I see.
And,
Right.
and maybe just for clarification for staff, my notes here are what you would like to see back is an engineering cost estimate in the useful life value that's gained by the installation of this structure, the sewer line, that the city would realize.
Well,
And
Is
the
that correct?
difference
in
the
layman's
cost.
terms, I'd like to know what the cost of that sewer, that existing sewer to be replaced
Oh,
in kind. Because that.
If the city had to do
If the
it.
project wasn't there, what would it cost the city
okay.
and its taxpayers to replace that line, which is some 340-some feet, whatever that lineal footage is, just as it lays.
Okay.
And then you have the delta because of the development, so that's what it's worth. But the delta, there's a delta in the benefit to the developer and the benefit to the city.
All right, well,
Do
we
you
can-
follow, do you understand what I mean? I'm not trying to depreciate
do.
the cost of that, because at some time in the very near future, I mean, 70 years, I would say within the next couple of decades, if that development wasn't there, this would need to be replaced.
In essence, what you're saying, just to use round numbers, if we got back an estimate for the sewer replacement in its existing location here, and that cost was $300,000 for the city to do that work, just as it is today, aside of this development, versus $500,000 for Mr. Perlmutter's development, that delta is the $200,000,
Correct.
the betterment. Gotcha.
I mean, I'll be honest with you, Mr. Perlmutter's contractor would be the better person to give us that price. That's a construction price. That's not any kind of engineering, I mean,
Or that or Teal.
yeah.
Teal has been very helpful with this project because they installed a new water main down
Well,
north.
And I'll tell you this, okay? He's doing 518, Teal's has prices here for 518 lineal feet, okay? And this project, all right?
So it's almost $700 per foot to do
Okay.
that work.
And instead of it being 518 feet, that run is, you said 300 and, how much feet? Three?
I just
Wagged a number.
wagged a number based on the drawing. It looks to me like it's about 340 feet.
I believe that's what the delta's gonna come back as. 700 times the difference between 518 and 340. What you're asking right now.
Except that there's no traffic because,
Well, he didn't assume any traffic in
It's not
his
in-
estimate because he
Well,
said
if-
North Street would be closed.
If you take simple numbers and just say 200
Correct.
feet additional, right?
Right,
Times
there you go.
750, that's 150 grand.
There you go. That's gonna be your
That's what I'm
number.
saying, that's what I was, if we're looking for a rough number,
That's it.
I don't know that we need to ask someone to do a whole project detail on this thing again. And at the end of the day, I don't think Mr. Perlmutter's asking for that either. He's asking for help, period.
The complicating factors here are, we don't need to do that today. We can kick that
That's-
can down the road.
Right.
That's
Okay?
correct.
So.
That's right.
Spent, the value of $1 today is not the value of $1 in 5 years or 7 years or whatever. We would look at alternative technologies, not just a rip out and replace.
but what we're trying to do is determine the value against doing something now.
So I guess that's what,
Yes.
I'll just throw out my opinion on that. If we can take out the benefit of the paving, the 60 grand, and then almost come to a point where we split the difference of 150, is that something the committee would agree to, and is that something that would be agreeable to Mr. Perlmutter? We're gaining the benefit of life on the pipe, we're gonna take over the paving, that's worth about, again, just trying to keep it simple, and in essence of time, trying to keep things moving forward. Is that something the committee would agree to? Is that something Mr. Perlmutter would agree to? That's not what he's asking for.
So you're saying 60,000
I'm
and
saying-
150,000?
I'm saying
No.
a total of 150.
Total 150.
Split
Backing
the
some-
difference,
okay.
Oh,
help
okay.
move this project along. We're gaining new pipe out in the road, additional life
150,000 total is what you're,
as an incentive
Asking.
to help move this
Gotcha.
project. If that's agreeable. If
And
Mr.
that
Perlmutter says that
includes the
doesn't
paving?
work, then it's a moot point, but
Just so that
I'm sorry?
Does that include the 150 include us doing the paving work?
Correct.
Okay,
Okay.
just so that I have clarity.
And then, just to ask the question, to run that number out, above and beyond what the paving actually cost us, would we be saying that would be a fee reduction consideration for the next building? Or a cash payment to the developer,
That extra 90,000
approximately?
approximately.
Have you already expended?
We have for number
permits.
3, I'm sorry, I didn't let you finish, I apologize.
So you're talking about building 4?
Yes, sir. And that was and I only bring that up because when Trish and I met with Mr. Perlmutter a couple weeks ago prior to this, he was fine with that, and that's not money we'll have to expend out of our coffers, but we can.
So it would be a credit
Against his
future
fees.
permit fees?
And at the time, he was willing to consider that. I just put it out there to see if that's the pleasure of the committee or, and again, I don't want to commit to Mr. Perlmutter I don't know if that works for you or not, but.
Well, again, I'm coming from a point of, first off, these apartments have been well received in our community, very well liked, has improved the value of our downtown
It's nice.
and our cityscape. I also know we have incentivized this project to the greatest levels that we can, so I want to be cautious of that as well. But in the essence of time and moving projects along, if we can meet in the middle, it may be the best benefit for all involved.
You seeking a motion?
I am.
Well, maybe one last question. Mr. Perlmutter, would you come up? You're going to get your exercise today.
Remember I say he's getting his workout this morning.
Before we make a motion, does the mayor's proposal of $150,000 total paving the road and then giving you a future incentive on the next building, does that help you close the gap to where you
Are
believe
you
you
saying
can do it?
150 plus paving the road?
That's not what I heard. What I heard was paving the road,
Total.
total, $150,000, paving the road, and then Trish did the math.
Approximately
About
90,000 towards
90,000
future fees.
Towards future fees.
Can I see those estimates?
Yeah, your
From Corrado.
and to you. Sure.
Is that assuming also the city is going to make sure that there's no I don't want to have to do traffic controls on top of that. There's another 50,000. Are we saying there's not going to be traffic controls needed?
No, not at all, because Middleford Road is controlled by the state, and they're going to make you do something, whatever that is, warning traffic that the roads
And they're going to
closed.
have people with flags and that kind of thing?
That I
So
don't-
that's
that I
what I'm
don't
saying.
know.
So there's an additional.
Sure. I don't know what the traffic control plan is going to be. That has to be submitted to the DOT and
But
the
if,
city.
but if we're allowed, we'll shut that road down, correct?
We will work with them to do a
Understanding
road
that's going to
closure.
impact your residents. But I
Right.
mean, if that's a simple, most cost-effective way, we don't have a problem shutting that road down.
My gut tells me, though, DelDOT's going to say, if
The
you're going to close
Middleford
that
Road's
road,
gonna
you're
be
going to
the-
have to give some notice out on Middleford Road
Okay.
signage. There's going to be something.
Signage, but maybe not a flagger out
And
there.
then when we close roads, we still require barricades,
Right, right.
lit.
Because the residents would still be, your current and existing residents, if we were to close that road, would still be able to get out
They'd
on
have to
Water
use the
Street.
west entrance.
Right.
So it wouldn't affect their ingress.
I mean, we
and egress.
certainly will work with you, no matter how this goes.
Is there any, on the plan, what about if there's sidewalk torn up too? I mean, is that part of the road? Are we saying public right-of-way, or are we just saying the road?
We would just overlay the road when it's finished. So just to run down that road, sorry for the pun, your contractor would have to do some type of temporary paving patch, and then we would come behind under a separate contract. We would mill out as necessary, and then in essence, basically just do a 2-inch overlay curb to curb. Because that's how we repave roads in the city. So you wouldn't get away from all paving, because we'd have to have a temporary patch on there. We don't want to bring our contractor in while you're in the middle of construction and foul you up from your schedule and what you're doing. But we would take on the cost of paving, the final overlay paving.
Still, I think we're closer, Mr. Mayor, but, you know, it's still an exorbitant amount. Because I'm not even positive Teal had temporary asphalt in there, you know, in their estimate, so I got to confirm a couple things, but, I mean, if there was any more that could be done, I think we're getting closer. Could I go off the 300 that I requested this morning?
Well, what we could do, the committee could move forward with an offer. You could circle back with Teal to verify those numbers and then call in and let us know if that's something favorable based on what they recommend to push forward to council. If possible, I'd like to leave here with some sort of decision versus having to come back
I
to
agree.
this. You know,
Well, it's just going to delay things, and like I said, if this goes further out, I don't even know if you know, right now I feel good, as I mentioned earlier, that the numbers till the end of March, and if this thing keeps dragging out, I don't know if April 1st comes around and there's going to be a drywall increase, you know, or concrete.
And if
It's
this
just going to
committee-
make the project worse and worse. We need to buy this project now or relatively soon if we're going to move this thing forward. If we're going to kick it down the road and let it be a park or whatever, or, you know, but,
Whatever the committee's recommendation is today, I have to get it written up so that it gets in council packets today. So there's a little bit of a time crunch.
And that would go before council?
Tuesday night.
This coming Tuesday night.
So that's why I have to get it in the packets today. By the end of the
I'd
business
feel
day
a little
today.
more comfortable if there was a little slough in there, Mr. Mayor, maybe $25,000 towards, you know, there's going to be some kind of patchwork, there's going to be some kind of, you know, traffic controls. You know, if we could come up with something a little more, I could probably stand here and agree to it.
Okay.
You know,
All right.
maybe $175,000 combination, you know.
All right, committee, is anybody prepared to make a motion that we could take to council?
You can keep them. I have a copy. You're good. You sure?
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion for the city of Seaford to assist the project by assuming the responsibility and cost of paving South North Street and reduction on future projects owned by the developer, David Perlmutter, not to exceed $175,000 with the stipulated condition the reduction in fee waiver would expire within 3 years from the date of city council approval.
All right, just for clarification on your motion, it's the paving plus an additional 175,000, or
No.
does the paving
Not
come out of
to
that?
No,
exclude.
not to exceed $175,000.
Thank you. Thank you for the clarification. Okay, so we have a motion. Is there a second?
Can I ask a question?
Question on the motion, sure.
How, how is that not to exceed measured? Like, how do you?
So just to maybe run it out this way, obviously, the paving will be complete before Building 4. So we'll have, the Director of Public Works will, obviously, he bids it, we'll get a full accounting of what the paving cost. We'll submit that to Mr. Perlmutter and say, now you have a credit remaining of X dollars up to the 175,000. And we'll write a letter
Does
that
that make sense?
encapsulates it, and
Okay, I'll second the motion.
So we have a second on the motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, it's unanimous. So this will go to City Council on Tuesday night for their vote and approval or declination.
Thank you very much for your
Thank you,
time.
Mr.
Thanks for
Perlmutter.
coming.
Good to see you.
You need a motion.
to adjourn.
And we need a motion to adjourn. Thank you.
So moved.
I'll second it.
We have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Thank you.